Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Nick and Griff Show. Today is a Satoshi Saturday, and it is Saturday, March 4th. It's 8:38 a.m. Griff, how are you doing, my guy?
Grinding through another week. We're like, what is this? Week 4 of recovery from knee surgery. So we're grinding through it. We're walking now and standing and all kinds of things. So, I feel like I've been reborn, Nick, so to speak. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. This was an interesting week. Typically, Griff, you and I talk a couple of times throughout the week. And I called you a couple of times, you called me a couple of times, and we never got to connect. So I'm excited to kind of jump into some topics today and talk a little bit about, something that we both enjoy. That's Bitcoin.
Before we even go into the topics, it's amazing how Bitcoiners are also like time travelers or future predictors, because like so many things that are happening right now, everybody's been saying they're going to happen. And I'm not going to say that's made it boring for me, but it's just that I've seen it now happen so many times where Bitcoiners are like, well, this is probably going to happen. And then this is probably going to happen. And then when you think it's going to go up, then some more stuff happens. And then like some more stuff happens. And then when you least expect it, boop, then it goes up.
You just reminded me of something, and I just actually started reading. It's 21 lessons, what I've learned from falling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And this was written by, it's at Gigi on Twitter. Go check him out. He does a really good job of writing. And this book specifically is a little bit more of an overview. He doesn't get into like all the specifics. This is the very end of chapter 10 or lesson number 10. Bitcoin is all of the above. It is extreme blushing. He says it is extremely rare. There's 21 million Bitcoin. Increasingly hard to produce because of the reward halving, right? The Bitcoin subsidy halving. It can't be replaced. And then he says a lost private key is lost forever, and enables us to do some quite useful things. But yeah, I think your thought is true. I mean, it's like, hey, if I'm gonna look into the future and try to think about what potential issues I may face, and I'm looking into the future with the lens of these fundamental principles that we believe to be true, that we believe should be true of money, right? Mm-hmm. Money should be scarce. Money should be a fixed supply. It should be an immutable ledger. Some central authority shouldn't be able to just take your money and nothing can be done about it. That should be wrong. And so whenever you start looking out into, looks like those guys are starting to move away from those principles, well, then you're probably going to run into issues.
Anybody who is in crypto is trying to steal your money. I don't know how else to put it. But if you believe in Bitcoin, you just got to keep on churning, keep on wheeling and not really caring, and learn how to self-custody. And, one piece of news that I was going to start off with is they're definitely trying to legislate against Bitcoin over the next, or at least that's 22 states, I think, have like loose proposals to like kind of grease the wheels for CBDCs and then stop, quote unquote, online digital asset, something like that, which you can't do. Like, that's kind of the thing about Bitcoin. You can't stop it. But
I did read a little bit about what you're talking about. I think it was Dennis Porter that posted a lot of those posts, that he had a couple of photos in there, and I think a video with the guy talking, and they were saying that something cannot be a money if it existed prior to the government or central authority deeming it as money.
Yeah,
that's so what funny. They said, and you're like, so what about gold? Like, so this applies now, but it didn't apply then. So how can you know what I'm saying? Like that. Yeah. This doesn't. So then it's truly creating a central authority on who decides what is money. And the funniest part is, money is a network, right? And if you are in an area that has a bad money, well, you're naturally going to want to find a better money to store your value, to transact in, all 100%. Of these things, right? Whatever the most liquid, saleable good in the market is going to be a good medium of exchange. And if that can also double as a really good store of value, well, then money is naturally, or value is naturally going to flow to that money because it's the best money.
The balls it's going to take to hold one Bitcoin for the next 80 years, I think will be pretty crazy. I think if you end up like in 100 years, somehow you're the one person who was like, all this stuff doesn't matter. I'm just going to hold this bad boy forever. I just don't care. That thing will be so valuable because I think the network is going to grow. That's what Nick and I talk about all the time, big B and little b. The network is growing so fast, so stinking. The Bitcoin network is growing so fast. It's going to be interesting to see how Bitcoin, the network, and Bitcoin, the commodity, turn into money. I mean, I'd love for the world to just go back to being able to save. Investing is hard. It's way too, I mean, at this point, if we found out anything was if you ever lower interest rates to like 0% or 2%, there's going to be some malinvestment out there. There's going to be some people getting a lot of money building products that nobody wants. Bitcoin's network will prove itself. I mean, I think Bitcoin's network will become a store of value, I think it'll become a unit of account faster than people think. And the SEC's coming for these bad boys, Nick. I did notice that. I'm not. Yeah. Are we regulation people? Do we root for that? Like, it's really hard for me to want to root for it, but I'm just like, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, I think the regulation is interesting because just like you're saying, dude, like Bitcoin is decentralized. It is a commodity. It is property. So, hey, bring on the regulation. Come on, bring it on. Bring it on. You can't stop it. What are you going to do? Like, how do you actually regulate Bitcoin? What are they going to do? They can't control it. Nobody controls Bitcoin. What are you going to do? How do you regulate something that is independent of everything else? You just can't. But I think what's interesting is right now, we think about, we're living in a fiat world, and we're on a podcast here on a Saturday morning talking about a decentralized, independent of everything else money, a permissionless network that allows people to store value without trusted third parties. And I think it's interesting because in this time, there's a lot of crossover and mixing and mingling of these different principles, right? And the topic I'm thinking about here today specifically is the Silvergate bank deal. Here's just a couple of pieces that I found whenever I was looking around getting ready for this morning, was that, Silvergate is not a liquidity partner. There's a lot of, who is the Prime Trust? Prime Trust is a huge liquidity partner, or was a huge liquidity partner for a lot of crypto exchanges. Whenever the liquidity goes, so these exchanges, they've got, let's say it's just dollars. Let's say it's American based, it's dollars. They've got to have dollars and they've got to have the crypto asset that they want, or that they want to offer and sell, right? So they have to be able to sell the crypto asset to the person that wants to buy it. And they also have to give dollars to the person that wants to sell their crypto asset. They have to have liquidity in order to do that. So it's important to note that the Silvergate Bank is not a liquidity partner. It is an on-off ramp for dollars. It's a dollar on-off ramp. What are the inner workings of that? I'm not 100% sure. One piece that I thought was crazy that I found in an article was that at the time of FTX's collapse, 90% of Silvergate's bank deposits came from crypto companies. Now, we're using the word crypto here. They use the word crypto. This is not Bitcoin. We're talking about the shitcoin casino. We're talking about fraudulent companies that are stealing value from people, selling a false reality, selling a bad bag of goods. But 90% of this bank's deposits were from crypto companies. And so I guess what happened was, as they were filing some of their filings with the SEC, they had reported, they had sent in a preliminary, like, hey, this is where we think we're going to be. And it's like a ton of losses because, as you can imagine, over this past, year and a half, whatever it's been, from that $69,000 high, all of these crypto companies have lost tons and tons and tons and tons of value. Now, the bad news for the crypto companies is that there actually never was any value. It was all bullshit from the beginning. Then going in to submit their official filings, not their preliminary filings, but their official filings, they had to say, hey, we're not going to be able to submit on time because we've actually lost a shitload more than we thought. And here's what's wild. From Wednesday night to Thursday morning, this bank's publicly traded stock
Mm-hmm.
dropped over 40%. Could you imagine that? 40%. And this is not now keep in mind, this is a bank. This is a real bank. This is not a crypto company. This is a real bank. 40% one day, bang, gone. I think at this point the writing is on the wall for these guys. Doesn't seem like, I mean, I don't know how you do that and just come back from that. I don't think that they're going to come back from that. But oh, dude, what a deal. What do you think, Griff?
I doubt that big institutions want plebes to be able to buy it and hold it and secure it. You can't stop Bitcoin. It is better than everything else for your business. I mean, it's cheaper, it's instant, it's free, it's frictionless. It's just a better use of money. So I don't doubt that institutions will want to use Bitcoin. I just doubt that they want Nick and I and you to hold Bitcoin, because if we hold Bitcoin, then we have as much power as the institutions. Me and Nick talk about this all the time. Bitcoin is here to root out the inefficiencies in the world. If you truly believe in Bitcoin, you believe that this is going to be the money in the next 50 years, not because not because we're ready for it, but because this is just how money works, is how things get picked. The state has a plan to try to control you until they can't control you anymore or they lose. And I think they're going to lose. And I think our job is to try to build on the Bitcoin network and help it out. And I don't know, see where this thing goes. But I think anything Silvergate is going to go to zero. I think anything that tries to compete with Bitcoin will go to zero because there's just no use for it.
And this is another thought that I pulled from 21 Lessons there by Gigi. But he says in there at one point, for most people, money works just fine. Yeah. And because of that, they don't really care what's going on underneath, right? But you and I that are thinking a little bit more critically about what's actually going on, that's when we're forced to look into the inner workings. Is when we start realizing that things are breaking down. Things aren't working as they are supposed to, right? There's some questions that there's not really good answers to as to why, right? And many people in the world would argue that things are just fine, but they actually aren't. So what's actually happening inside? And want to go a little bit into the topic of the central authority, the Federal Reserve, and how they control the monetary supply and the cost of money. And I think it's extremely important to note that they exclusively have the power to do this. Nobody else can do this. You and I can't just create some dollars and do this and do that. No. You can't just go file some deal and create real money. You can't create dollars. Now, you can go start a bank and you can create credit, right? But that's not money. Credit is not money. Now, debt right now, you could argue, is money, right? In that treasuries are the base layer of this current system. But let's just think about the monetary supply here real quick. This can increase and decrease, impacting the purchasing power of your money, right? As the monetary supply increases, your purchasing power decreases. And as the monetary supply decreases, your purchasing power increases. Now, historically, we've seen decreases in the money supply. We're actually in a position right now where we went way up in the monetary supply within the past couple of years, and the monetary supply has actually decreased here within the past, I think, 3-6 months or whatever it's been. But those decreases are far outweighed by massive in monetary supply.
We basically already live in a Web3 world where the Fed is ETH or whatever the hell you want to call it. And there's a whole bunch of different banks and institutions that surround the Fed, and they're all the shit coins. And people live in their little monetary network supported by their shit coins. And the Fed is the one that kind of oversees them all. And if you don't, if your little shit coin is, the person at the top was shady, you'll go to zero.
So the bold statement at the end of this monetary supply piece is that the Federal Reserve and the federal government operating together, are stealing your purchasing power. They're stealing your value. They're stealing the time and labor that you spent in the market creating value to earn this money due to their own fiscal irresponsibility. The federal government and the Federal Reserve, they don't balance their budgets the same way you and I do. We make money and we can't spend more money than what we have unless, we can go get some credit cards, right? But they don't do that, right? They don't go get a credit card. They just create more money. They issue bonds, and the Federal Reserve is the number one demand buyer of bonds. These two entities are working in collusion to create more money, which destroys the value. So they are stealing your money due to their own fiscal irresponsibility. So that's a thought there on monetary supply. This is a part of the broken system. Now, the next piece is the cost of money. The cost of money is referred to generally as interest rates. Interest rates are representative of how much it costs to borrow money. And this starts at the central bank level and then trickles all the way down through the banking system to the individuals. Anytime that you're borrowing money, this is at play. And let me ask a question here. Griff, how do you borrow something that doesn't exist? If I said, hey, Griff, can I borrow your Maserati car for the weekend? If you don't have a Maserati, how can I actually borrow your car? This is actually what is happening. Banks don't have the money. Banks don't have the money. Back in, I think it was 2020, the CARES Act, they removed the 10% reserve requirement. There is zero reserve requirement for banks now. Zero reserve requirements. Think about that. You deposit money to the bank and they are going to hold on to it for you. No. Actually, sorry. I got that wrong. They don't. They take that money and they lend it out as many times as they want. How crazy is that? This is what's happening every day in the open market for money.
What would the inflation rate truly be if we went based on the way like local banks just lend out money?
Oh, dude, it's ridiculous. This is where I was going next, right? It's like, hey, if you borrowed money to buy your home, we just did this, right? We got a 30-year fixed rate mortgage to buy our home. We're borrowing money that doesn't exist. We're borrowing credit from the bank. How crazy is that? And now this is where I want to go next with this, is that the cost of money, it distorts the demand and therefore capital allocation, right? We did not have liquid cash to buy our home, but we were able to borrow something that doesn't exist to buy our home. That created a truly artificial demand in the housing market. This happens all day, every day. If you're borrowing money from the bank, you are borrowing credit and you are distorting what is actually real in the market. Another question for you. How much money do you need to make on an investment to break even if your money costs 1%? Well, you got to make 1%. You got to make 1% on your investment to break even, right? Well, what if your money costs you 8%, a year and a half later, like what we've seen, right? There was a time back in early 21 when you could buy a home with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at like 1%, bro, even less than 1%. Now, here's what my thought is was that investment in early 2021 at 1% a good investment?
Yeah.
Or was the money just cheap? Right. And then also, how does that impact our perception of what good capital allocation is? Griff, if you had our purchase price on our home was $180,000. If you had $180,000 liquid cash, would you lend that to me for 5.12%? Because that's the interest rate that we locked in. Who in the hell would part with that amount of money? I'm talking real money. You went out and earned real money.
No.
If you've saved it cash, why would you part with that hard-earned money for 5%? So my question here is, how does this actually impact our perception of what the real demand in the market is for, call it homes or investment properties or whatever you're thinking about, right? Whatever the demand is. Think about, I see this all the time in my industry. I work in commercial construction. The cost of money right now is tightening everything, right? All of these investment deals that developers are doing. We're working on a laundry right now. And if the budget is over X amount of dollars, well, then it doesn't make sense for the investor to build out this old gas station into a laundromat because he can't make enough money to service the cost of that money. So then, is that a good investment? How do we know if that's a good investment if the bar changes, right? We're trying to measure things with a rubber band. There's no static value of what is real. So how does this affect capital allocation? It's so bad. It's so distorted.
I know for a fact that if you made $75,000 2 years ago, if you made $75,000 a year, you had as much purchasing power in the real estate market as somebody who makes $120,000 today. Something has to give. I wanted to leave this podcast with this. The Bitcoiners seem right, and like my feeling at this point is they just can't keep doing this forever. They can't keep doing it forever. I don't think the game is over officially. I don't think the United States dollar is done. I don't think that the United States is done. I don't think commerce or nation states and everything like my fantasy utopia world is here yet. But I think that it's not doing very well. I think that there's a lot of smoke screens. I think there's a lot of shit on top. And I think we got to find out what's really working and then go from there and rebuild probably as a country as well. I'd love to be more patriotic, but we're just acting like a bunch of fools, in my opinion. And it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. I just know with Bitcoin that there's a block produced every 10 minutes and there's not much for me to hate there. There's not much for me to, it's an apolitical thing. So there's not much for me to get mad about with Bitcoin. And I wish people understood that. I'm just buying Bitcoin because I'm like, hey man, listen, like I don't think the way that you guys are doing things is going to work out for my lifetime. Like I just don't. I don't think that we're going to go another 50 years. I just don't see how that's just going to work over the long term. I just don't. If money gets shitty, the world gets shitty. I love people, but when money gets shitty, the world gets shitty. Sorry about it. I know for a fact money is very shitty right now, which means I think that there's a whole bunch of just nonsense going on, and I don't blame the people. I'm just saying, like, that's what happens when money gets crazy. Oh man, the world is full of bad ideas, and I'm not saying I'm the one with the good ideas. You know, let's get a little audit going. We need to get a little audit going of this whole situation. we need to figure this thing out. All right, guys. Some of us kind of think that like it's being run by like, I don't know, some lizard group in the back, you know, maybe it's Israel, like who really knows who's running what? Like we're freaking out a little bit for a good reason because this money's so shitty. If I can't even use the public services I pay taxes for because I can't trust them, becomes a problem. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the Bitcoin network will be stronger, but you know, that's just my take, obviously. A lot of people.
Good thoughts, Griff. Yeah. Hey, if you guys are not watching us right now, we've got video on Spotify and on YouTube. Come check us out. We like to hang out. And you might notice that I'm wearing a Satoshi Saturdays shirt that matches our Satoshi Saturdays logo up here. Come get the gear at the Satoshi shop. Links down in the description. Come see us on Twitter as well. We like to post our clips there from our podcasts. Come see the short clips. We like to interact with people there. Come hit us on Twitter. It's at Nick and Griff Show. Man, Satoshi Saturdays are always a good time. I'll see you next week, Griff. Peace.